Well, you're in for a treat today because I'm going to chat with one of my very early mentors when I first started my property investment journey. Now, I bought my first investment property in 1971 without much money, having saved a little deposit and going halves with my parents because I couldn't afford to buy on my own, and I definitely didn't understand the rules of the game. I just knew that wealthy people owned property, and I also wanted to be wealthy. At the time, I didn't have many books on property investment. Clearly, there were no podcasts. There weren't even investment tapes or CDs in those days. But one of the very first books I read was by Robert G. Allen, an American author who wrote the book Nothing Down. Now, obviously, the concept of buying property with none of my own money, nothing down, as the Americans would say, or no deposit, that seemed a very attractive proposition. While it may well have worked in the United States, those principles didn't work here then, and they definitely don't today. Even though there are still some people out there who's going to suggest you can work your way around the system, you can invest in property with no money, you can bypass the banks. Let me make it clear. I don't advocate that strategy. I never have. It doesn't work. However, Robert Allen went on to write 10 books, including 5 New York Times bestsellers, and I kept buying them and I kept learning from him, especially his great book, Creating Wealth, which explained how to retire using his 7 principles of wealth. Now, this book is what we're going to be discussing in my chat with this legend of real estate today, and it changed my way of thinking about money and about property investing. Robert's subsequent books and training courses were also part of my early investment learnings, and they still stay with me today. So I was excited when I had the opportunity to interview Robert G. Allen recently. Now, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of our discussion, but first I want to give you a word of warning. Robert does mention his concept of buying property with nothing down, and that you can go and find distressed vendors and take over their mortgages and buy a property at a huge discount today. Now, I was going to cut out that section of the interview, but I decided to leave it in. Not out of courtesy to Robert, but because while these principles may work in the United States where the economic situation is different and where the tax rules and the stamp duty rules are different, they don't have that, they definitely don't work in Australia at all today and never have. However, I decided to leave that segment in the interview today so you can hear how some people think and how others in the property market in Australia are incorrectly teaching these principles to naive investors today. Now, let me be clear. Our housing markets have moved on, and the next property wave, it's already commenced. There are very few mortgagee sales happening, and there are very few distressed property owners who let you take over the mortgages Robert Allen suggests. As I said, this situation may be different overseas, but this particular aspect of his investment strategy just doesn't work in Australia, so you should be wary of those selling courses trying to teach you how to use those techniques today. As I said, there are legal and stamp duty reasons why it just doesn't work here. It's another example of how many overseas gurus just don't understand the local market and why their teachings aren't necessarily relevant here. The fact is, there's a shortage of investment-grade properties in the market at the moment, with more buyers than sellers. You won't get a bargain if you look for the right property, an investment-grade property, one that's going to grow at wealth-producing rates of return. It's often said you make your money when you buy property, but it's not because you buy a bargain. It's not because you buy a secondary distressed property cheaply, as Robert Allen is going to recommend in the chat I have with him. It's because you buy the right property. That's why you make your money when you buy it, because it's the right one. One that's going to grow at above average rates of return. One that's going to keep growing in value. A property that's going to be in continuous strong demand by owner-occupiers, but also by tenants who can afford to and will be prepared to pay you higher rents. Now, over the years, I've had many mentors. And as I explained, Robert Allen was one of my early mentors. But like everything in life, I've chosen to select portions of his learning, those that are applicable to Australia, and discard others that are not. Of course, that's easy for me today, with the perspective of close to 50 years of investing. I know what works and I know what doesn't. But I can understand why many beginning investors get lured by the concept of nothing down. Remember, real estate is not a get-rich-quick investing scheme, and wealth is the transfer of money from the impatient to the patient. Well, now that you've heard that really long disclaimer and introduction, there's so much great information in my interview with Robert Allen. I look forward to presenting it to you, and please let me know how you think about it. Leave a comment, and welcome to today's episode of the Michael Yardney podcast.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
I'm delighted that my special guest today is Robert G. Allen, one of the most influential investment advisors of all time. And he's authored 10 books, including 5 New York Times bestsellers, many of which I've actually got on my bookshelf still. Now, Robert's appeared on hundreds of television shows, radio shows, and featured in journals like the Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, Barron's Money Magazine. But I've been following Robert's writings and teachings for a number of decades, and I class him as one of my mentors. So it's a real pleasure to have you on the show today. Welcome, Robert.
Oh, Michael, I'm so excited to be here with you, talking down under.
Yes, and we are. And we're living in interesting times. Now, Robert, I know you became famous for your property strategies, and then you branched out into more wealth creation advice and life mentoring. But many of my audience may not know a lot about you. I know about your history for many decades. So maybe you could tell us a bit about the Robert Allen story, please.
Thank you. Well, just like all of you, I wanted to be a property millionaire, and I used real estate to get started. I did a lot of research on how you buy real estate with little or no money down, because I had very little or no money down myself, no credit, no experience. And I wrote my first book called Nothing Down, a proven program that shows you how to buy real estate with little or no money down. Now, the fundamental principles of that book will relate to any country in the world. Really, real estate is the same pretty much everywhere. It's just that there's slightly different rules here and there. Well, here in America, I used my fundamental principle, which was number one, most people are not highly motivated to sell. And then when you come to real estate, maybe only 1 or 2% are extremely motivated to sell. Is how do you find that 1%? Because most realtors don't deal with that 1%. They deal with the ordinary person. And so when you come to them and say, I'd like to buy a property with nothing down, they laugh at you, because those properties are already gone by the time they get to the realtor, or the realtor, that him or herself, has already bought all those properties. So you've got to have strategies for how you find a highly motivated seller, whether you live in Sydney, Australia, or you live in Singapore, or you live in Japan, or live in anywhere in the world, because real estate is illiquid. And therefore, people who need money fast have to be flexible. So my first million, it took me about 3 to 4 years here in America. And then I wrote the book about it, not realizing it would be a huge bestseller and that it would reach people like Michael here in Australia. It was called Nothing Down, as I said, and it became a huge, huge, huge New York Times bestseller, number one. But the reason it did is because people were so darn skeptical. And, when I come to Australia, I find a lot of skepticism where people say, it can't work. So what I did is I said, send me to any city, take away my wallet, give me $100 bill, and in 72 hours, I'll buy an excellent piece of real estate using none of my own money. And we ran full-page ads in all the newspapers in America, and the LA Times did not like the fact that I was advertising this crazy claim. And so they challenged me, and they said, you're going to go with us, one of our reporters, you're going to go to San Francisco. They only told me that the morning of. We flew to San Francisco with a reporter by my side. He said, okay, give me your wallet. Gave me $20 bill, 5 $20 bills. And he said, okay, you've got 72 hours or your name is mud, because they really wanted to take me down.
Oh, yes.
And the bottom line was, is in 57 hours, I bought 6 properties that the reporter reported on. I actually bought 7, but they only reported on 6. But hey, if there was just one, that would have been enough. The point is, using the principles like I just shared with you earlier, number one, the first principle is there are some highly motivated sellers who need to sell, who don't want their real estate, who are just dying to get rid of it. And they're extremely rare, like 1% of the ads you see. And therefore, finding that 1%, negotiating with that 1%, using techniques of what I call the 50 nothing down techniques. How do you cobble together ways in which you solve the seller's problem without coming with cash out of your own pocket? That's the second part, which is I call finding is the first step, funding is a second step, and farming is how do you make money from this? Well, do you keep it and rent it, or do you flip it and get rid of it and make some money quickly? See, those three principles, finding, funding, farming, they're going to work in Australia. They're going to work in Beijing, really. They're going
Yes, they will. The world is a bit different today, but those principles are still solid. But one of the things you wrote in your book, Robert, or many of your books, was that everything you want is outside your comfort zone. And this is clearly one of the things you're getting at here. Most people don't believe they can make it, they can do it, whether it's real estate, internet businesses, even relationships, I guess.
When they sent me to San Francisco, they were assuming that wealth is something that's outside of you. That wealth is the things that the banker was looking for, such as cash, cash flow, credit, collateral, the four famous banker C's, the C's of cash, credit, collateral, etc. What I knew was that wealth is not any of those things. The source of wealth is you, and it's your internal sources, such as your confidence, your creativity, your chutzpah, your character. These are all C words that are inside you. These things you do take with you. But wealth, wealth I call it wealth with a small w and wealth with a capital W. Capital W wealth is inside you. You are your wealth. And if you have a strong dream, you can find the resources, as Tony Robbins teaches you want to be resourceful. So you go find the resources, such as somebody else has the cash, somebody else has the credit, somebody else has the collateral. Usually they have the money, but they don't have the time, or they don't know how to use their money. So you partner with them at first when you don't have any money to yourself at first. You partner with somebody else who has those resources. And then eventually, you'll make money together. Eventually, you'll have enough money to do it by yourself. So don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it, that you are poor. There's no such thing as a poverty. It's a poverty mindset is all you really have. And if you have a strong mindset of what you really want, you can make that happen.
Well, wealth isn't. I similarly write that wealth has nothing to do with what you've got. It's what you're left with when it's all taken away from you. And I know over the years you've had your challenges. You've been very open about them. I have as well. And I guess many of mine were self-induced. Currently, though, Robert, people are in the middle of a pandemic, a recession, social unrest, political unrest. So some people listening to this are going to have challenges not because of their own fault. Their businesses are going to be closed down. Their real estate isn't going to go up in value. People are not going to pay rent. What advice would you have for somebody currently suffering the challenges of this modern COVID era?
Well, let's go back to the last time would be if you could buy a lot of real estate, what year would you select? If you could go back 30 years and buy whatever real estate you could buy at the price they were at that time, what year would you go back to?
Well, I guess the last time was what we call the global financial crisis, the big financial crisis 10, 12 years ago, 2008, 9.
Yeah, exactly. And if you could go back to 2008 or 9 and buy with both hands as much as you could, why would you do that? Because there were highly motivated sellers. Because at that time, people were forced to get rid of the real estate that they'd hung on to for maybe decades. And something happened, they got sick or they had a problem, and and now the economy was upside down. So what are they going to say about 2020 in 10 years from now?
I wish I would have bought more real estate then.
Exactly. They're going to say, gee, if I could only go back to 2020 and buy 10 properties in 2020, because people are forced during this terrible time to get rid of their real estate. They are highly motivated. There might be 5% or 10% of the people now who are highly motivated to sell. Still 90% of the people are going to say, you crazy? Of course, I want my price. I want my terms. I want all cash. But a few are desperate, and they can't wait. And so if you've got a little bit of cash, sometimes even if you don't have any cash, and you go, can you just take over my monthly payments? Just take me out of this thing so that I don't have to make these monthly payments any longer. Now people say, well, the banks are involved and they're going to have all kinds of rules and you can't do it. What percentage of the properties in Australia are free and clear right now? I bet there's 20% of the properties in Australia have no mortgages on them.
Yes, but
so you don't negotiate with a bank.
No.
So the rules are totally without restriction when an owner is trying to sell it. So maybe the owner is saying, I need to get rid of this thing right now. The properties are going to go, down in value. So maybe you can offer them a fairly fair price. Maybe it's a little below market in order for that seller to go, I'll take no money down. I don't need a lot of cash now, but I just need to get rid of this property because I'm afraid of the property's values are going to go down 50%. So you give them a fair price now. And what I'm trying to say is there's always a way for you, no matter who you are, no matter how poor you think you are, if you have no credibility at all, people who are highly motivated to sell, they don't look at your credibility the way you think they look at it. They're desperate. And therefore, if you bring somebody along with as a partner, the two of you together, maybe they've got a little stronger financials than you do. The two of you together can buy that property with little or no money down. Trust me.
Now, Robert, I'd like to take you back to some of your original principles, things I learned from you long before Robert Kiyosaki talked about them, long before Tony Robbins or T. Harv Eker wrote about them. You wrote them in your great book, Creating Wealth, and you said that our biggest obstacles to wealth building are our false assumptions, things that stop us from becoming rich. I guess it's because of things we heard, things we saw, how we were programmed as a child. But can we talk through a couple of those? And the first one is that story that we've been told that having a good job ultimately leads to wealth. And that's not really the case, is it? Working harder isn't going to get you anywhere.
Oh, no. How many rich people do you know who made their wealth by working at a job? You don't find very many. Maybe they get lucky and they join Google, and therefore they become an employee and end up with stock. But extremely rarely, there are two types of people in your country, and as there are in mine. There's entrepreneurs and there's employees. In my country, 15% of the population are entrepreneurs or self-described entrepreneurs. They want to own a business. They don't want to work for somebody else. I don't know what it's like down under. I imagine it's fairly close to that.
Similar.
So most people are employees, and therefore they don't get why we are willing to take these kinds of risks to be financially free. It's because the value we apply to the word freedom. It's so important to us to be free. Whereas for an employee, it's so important for them to be secure, to be safe. And you see how radically different those two kinds of thinking are, safety versus freedom. And therefore, when I'm talking, I'll be listening on your podcast to some employees, and they're not willing to step outside their comfort zone. Well, all the money they ever wanted, everything they've ever wanted is about an inch outside their comfort zone. But because safety is their fundamental principle or their value, they don't dare step outside their comfort zone, which is where all the opportunity is. It's always outside your comfort zone. So entrepreneurs are natural. They love to go outside their comfort zone. They enjoy the risk, this feeling of sort of like well, it's not gambling, but it's like you feel like, hey, I want to be free and I'm willing to take whatever risk I need to take. So your podcast is probably going to pick up most entrepreneurs.
Security is really only an illusion for those people who are thinking about it.
Totally.
They're looking for security because they're trying to avoid risk. But if you avoid risk, Robert, you're also avoiding opportunities. That's the price you pay. And I guess they're also concerned that failure is bad. Now, I used to be ashamed of my failures and my mistakes, but I've made plenty of them. But as I've matured, I've realized that failure is really just part of success, isn't it? It's actually a very important part of it.
Yeah. Um, most people are afraid of rejection and failure. That's one of their biggest fears. And if that's you, if you're listening to us now, and that's where you're at, how much has that fear cost you?
Mm.
Because of the opportunities that you've missed, you literally have passed on many millions of dollars worth of opportunities. So the fear that you think is just a thought, it's not a thought, it has a consequence. Every thought you think has a consequence. And if the fear thought keeps coming up in your life, you have to ask yourself the question, how many millions have I lost because of this simple thought? This thought is dangerous. It's dangerous. Now, at a time like this, when it appears that the world is falling apart, uh, 10 years from now, you're going to look back on today and you're going to go, gosh, I wasn't willing to take action during the best opportunity of my lifetime. And you'll realize that many, many opportunities have escaped you. Some of you will not let the fear stop you, but you'll go out there and find opportunities that any smart person would go, wow, this is an opportunity of a lifetime, even in the middle of COVID. And you'll find those opportunities and you buy one or two, and set you up for life.
Where you are today in your life, the way it looks today, is really a result of the choices you made a number of years ago. I'm here speaking to you today because many years ago, I picked up a book in a bookshop. Who would have thought it ended up helping me become successful personally, and now having a chat with you? So the thoughts people are making today, the discussions they're having in their head, the choices they make, that's going to decide where they're going to be down the track, isn't it, Robert?
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever read a book that's changed your life? Well, Michael said he has. Well, for me, I have too. More than likely, you're going to pick up a book that'll transform the way you think. And we are not trained in school to think like entrepreneurs. Because we're taught by employees. Employees are not entrepreneurs, and therefore they're going to teach us how to think like an employee. We are teaching you how to think like an entrepreneur. If that resonates with you, then you're going to pick up some of the great classics like Think and Grow Rich. Have you read that yet? Go read it. You're going to read one of the classics, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Kiyosaki. I bought Kiyosaki's book in Perth, Australia, when I was there. Perth, Australia. And I met Robert, and I spoke on a stage in Japan year before last. And he showed a copy of Creating Wealth, which is the book you mentioned there, Michael. And he said, I gave this book to my wife 29 years ago. And I told her to read this book. It says the simple system: buy 2 properties a year. And in 10 years, you'll own 20 properties, and they'll set you financially free. She said, my wife read your book, Creating Wealth. And instead of waiting 10 years, she bought 20 properties in 18 months. He says, it just totally set us free. He says, today we own 7,000 properties. This is from Saki himself. So what I'm trying to say to all of you is pick a copy of some of these books. Creating Wealth's a little older now. It's a little long in the tooth. So get Multiple Streams of Income, which is one of my favorite books, or get The 1 Minute Millionaire, is another one of my books that I think you'd enjoy. Or go to robertallen.com, to my website, and let me give you a copy of one of my books. Bottom line is, wherever you find your inspiration, you read it, study it. Michael has read many, but his library is filled with great books, and so is mine. Is your library filled with books that'll change your life? Mike and I will both tell you, you can try this by yourself, but you need to have the mentorship of somebody who's done it, even if it's just their book or their audio program or their video program or this podcast right here. Connect with this regularly, because it's, for entrepreneurs, it's a dangerous world, because it's inhabited by employees who don't understand this at all. They think we're crazy.
But as you say, that's what we were taught, either by our schools, the system, or often by our parents, who were well-meaning. But in my seminars, when I was able to run them, I'd ask, who's got multimillionaire parents there? And unless my kids were in the room, hardly anyone would put up their hand. And so they're being taught by what I guess I call unwealthy people. One of the things they teach you, Robert, is diversification. But in your books, I know you teach a number of wealth principles, and many people would disagree with it, but I agree with you that you shouldn't necessarily diversify. You should concentrate on something that you're good at and become a real expert at it.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to focus. Like Warren Buffett says, put all your eggs in one basket and then watch that basket. So most people say you don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's just the opposite. But once you dig and dig your mine, your gold mine, if you will, once you digging out the wealth out of one stream of income, such as real estate, for instance, we've been talking about it, then you're going to go to another stream of income. You're going to have a portfolio of streams,
Mm.
different types of investments. So it could be the internet, could be some stock investing, could be a business that you own. When you have multiple streams of income, you are safer. You'll have a portfolio of different streams of income. If you lose one stream, well, you got three more, or five more, or seven more. Most people only get one stream and they go all in on just one thing, and that's a mistake, in my opinion. That's why in Multiple Streams of Income is one of my favorite books.
Very much so. One of the other myths we learned as a child was acquiring wealth is a win-lose game. Many people think you've got to be greedy to become rich. Others think you need to be filthy rich. That's not true, is it?
My mentor was Stephen Covey, and I was at Brigham Young University here. I took classes from him and actually ended up being a research assistant with him. And his main principle out of the 7 habits is win-win. Win-win means everybody's got to win. In other words, when you're negotiating with somebody, some people want to beat that person down to the lowest the lowest price they can. In my opinion, that's not smart because you get a reputation of being, this greedy SOB, and you want to leave a little on the table for them because eventually they're going to say to their friend, this guy, this gal is fair, so go to him. You'll get a fair price. So eventually, it's a long-term investment, but it's the best way to be. Win-win is the most important fundamental principle. Win-win.
That's one of the things I've always liked about you. In your books, your millionaire, I can't even say it, Cracking the Millionaire Code, you talk about enlightened wealth. And that's different to what many people think about wealth. What do you mean by that?
Well, first of all, it's about being a good person with your money, because money is a drug. And money can destroy as quickly as drugs can destroy. So you have to be careful. Number one, the way you inoculate yourself from the dangers of money, in my experience, is to give the first 10% away. Find a cause, a church, a charity, a philanthropy, something that needs the money more than you do. Give the first 10% away. And basically dedicate your wealth to this 10% that you give away. Now you can spend the 90%, and most people might say that giving 10% away is subtracting money from your wealth. And in my experience, giving 10% away multiplies your wealth by 10 times rather than subtracts it. So the enlightened entrepreneur is an entrepreneur who doesn't make money just for themselves, but also finds a way to make the world a better place. I don't know if you have a belief in a higher power, but I do. If you look at the universe and the magnificence of this unbelievable universe and the trillions of suns and the multi-trillions of planets that are out there, I want to be a partner with the creator of all of that. So when I give because I want to say I want to be on that person's team. I want to be on the higher power team. So higher power, where do you want me to give this money? And just watch what happens when you do that. Most people have a hard time doing it. They have a hard time giving. But once you've done it and you realize the benefits of it, you never go back. Never. It's amazing.
All this falls back to the way we think, doesn't it? And clearly you've got this reticular activating system in your mind, which what you focus on expands. What you look for comes there. So if you focus on the positives, if you focus on giving, if you focus on making it a better world, that's what you're going to have around you. But if you focus on the negatives, and it's easy to do that in the current environment, that's what you're going to see. That's what your GPS in your mind is going to find for you, Robert.
Absolutely. I can't say it any better than the way you just said it. Get your GPS, focusing on the right thing, and it's wealth with a capital W. It means wealth that's inside you, and then you give the first wealth away that you create, and that's what we call an enlightened entrepreneur.
So
Enlightenment.
wealth isn't really about money. Money's just the appearance of wealth. As you keep saying, it's really what's inside you. Uh, I remember Bill Gates saying, if you're born poor, it's not your fault. But if you die poor, it is your fault. So you, in your many books, have given us lots of ways of doing this. And I'm going to leave a link in the show notes. And because I know your time is limited, I'm going to finish off this chat today. But Robert, I really enjoyed it. There's so much more we can do. I look forward to having a chat with you again soon when we can dig into this a little bit deeper. But I'll leave a link in the show notes so people can find out about you and get to some of your books. Thank you so much for your time, Robert.
Thank you, Michael. I've enjoyed it so much. I love your spirit. You're amazing. Thank you very much. God bless everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful down under time.
Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed my chat with Robert Allen. Over the years, I've had many mentors. Some I've met, some I've paid for, others whose books I've read, and over time, some of my mentors have changed, but I was really excited to have a chat with Robert Allen, and I'm also proud that over the years I've become the mentor to lots of business people through Business Accelerator Mastermind with my partner Mark Creedon, and also in my mentorship program that I've run for about 15 years. I'm really proud that some people suggest I've educated more successful property investors than anyone else in Australia. And even though I've had another birthday and we're coming into another year now, I'm looking forward to continuing on my journey, and I'd love you to be part of the journey as well. If you'd like to have a great team of mentors around you, why not get to know what my team at Metropole do? You can find out at metropole.com.au. By the way, we've got no properties to sell, but we've got a proven track record. In 2020, we've won 3 separate awards as Australia's leading property consultants. But we don't sell properties. We advise people how to grow, protect and pass on their wealth with strategic property advice, and it all starts by putting a plan together. We bring your future into the present and help you do something about it now so that you can develop financial independence. We have buyer's agency, property management, renovations, development, wealth advisory, financial planning, but it all starts with putting a plan together. So go to metropole.com.au and take advantage of the property wave that we're going to experience over the next couple of years. When you're at metropole.com.au, leave your details or give us a call at 1300 Metropole and let us work together with you to devise a plan to help you become the person you plan to become.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
In my mindset moment today, I'd like to share with you the number one way of being really successful. Now, just for fun, a couple of days ago, I did a quick Google search on how to be successful, and it came up with 1,260 million articles in just 0.4 of a second. Now, that's a lot of blogs saying things like 7 steps to be successful sooner or 10 tips on how to be successful in life. But clearly, there's not one definition of success. In Arianna Huffington's book Thrive, she explains we need more than money, we need more than power as measures of success. And I agree. But there's one trait that I've noticed in all successful investors, business people and entrepreneurs that I deal with. And I've been dealing with successful people in my mentorship program and clients at Metropole for quite some time. And those who I'd class as really successful have the capability of gratitude. Now, at heart, what I'm talking about here is the fact that all abundance starts with gratitude. Gratitude is something that most successful people practice. If you think about it, gratitude actually creates more abundance. The word gratitude is very closely connected to the word appreciate. In economic terms, appreciation means increase in value. Another definition of appreciation is, I guess, to fully understand. When you're truly grateful, you communicate that you fully understand another person or a situation, and therefore you increase the value of that person or situation. But let me be clear, this is about choice. The fact is, you can choose to be grateful. Truly successful people choose to be grateful. Look, think about it. I bet you've noticed there's a lot of successful people out there who aren't really happy. What's going on there? Well, what's going on is they're looking outside to create meaning in their lives. Instead, the productive thing is to start with something that's internally generated, something that you've got total control of, access to, choice over. So your first choice to become more abundant, to have true success, is to be grateful. But be grateful proactively. Look for any area or anything that you can be grateful for. It's your interpretation. The choice comes from you. It's the first step to having a really successful life. And the way I handle this is every morning before I get out of bed, I have to think of 3 things that I'm truly grateful for. And they've got to be different every day. So, success, abundance starts with gratefulness, gratitude, and you have the choice. Well, I'm not sure when you listen to this show, because while it's scheduled to come out just before the end of 2020, you may be listening to this in 2021. And I just want to say thank you for being with me in 2020. We got through it. We got through a difficult year, and 2021 is going to be a great year. I'm looking forward to presenting the Michael Yardney podcast twice a week to you, other than in January when you're going to get it 3 times a week. There's a reason why. In previous years, we've found people have more time over summer, so I'd encourage you to listen to some of the back episodes, but to make it easier for you, every Tuesday I'm going to bring you a new episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, and on Thursdays and Saturdays I'm going to bring you some highlights of the best shows of the Michael Yardney podcast, so you're going to get some of the back issues that made a difference to people. Now, why I say that, it sounds melodramatic, is because people email me, tell me how some of the messages changed their life, and that really makes me feel good. So if you got some benefit from it, leave a comment, or please just tell somebody else about the Michael Yardney podcast. There's a share button on every podcast app, so you can let others know about it. And I look forward to spending 2021 with you on a regular basis. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?